The Ultra, in conversation with, murdered by crayons. This sounds rather sinister, doesn't it? Has something horrible happened to Harry, whereby he has been found lying in the garden in Monty's shit show with a red crayon shoved up his left nostril and a green crayon shoved up his right nostril, his trousers pulled down and a jumbo fat blue crayon shoved up his yitter? Is it murder most foul? Should Angela Lansbury be called? Miss Marple, perhaps? Perhaps we require Poirot or Columbo to attend on the scene to uncover what has happened to hapless Has. Is this a new and exciting series that has been developed whereby certain well-known people find themselves offed by a crayon-wielding murderer? Is there a wax-based serial killer on the loose somewhere, and that our valiant and heroic detective has to hunt them down? Well, interesting as that might be for a series sponsored by Crayola, it's actually nothing of the sort. But Murdered by Crayons is my next guest in the Ultra in Conversation with. As always, thank you to those of you who've been suggesting various guests, particularly those of you who have searched out contact details. That's very helpful and certainly saves time for me, makes it more likely that I'll be able to ask those individuals to participate in the series. Do keep your suggestions coming forward. You can either email me at narcissist1909@gmail.com or suggest to the person that you'd like to come on the relevant episode that they email me at narcissist1909@gmail.com, or you can add your observations in the comment section also. We've had some vibrant and interesting guests so far, and there's plenty more to come, many more in the pipeline. So do keep the suggestions coming forward. But what have you got to look forward to in relation to Murdered by Crayons? Well, as you're aware, a number of my guests have been those that are commentators about Harry and This One's Wife, amongst other things. And it's linked in, of course, to narcissism, because that is my area of expertise and forte. Well, narcissism is particularly prevalent in relation to the discussion that I have with my next guest, and indeed proves to be entirely revelatory to him also. But what have you got to look forward to? Well, here's something to whet your appetite.
It's taken a life of its own. It started with my son. I have an older son as well, and I kind of looped him in on all of this. But it started with my youngest son. But as this evolved, I started having victims of sexual assault and victims of human trafficking reaching out to me and thanking me for exposing this and bringing attention to it. And it just took a life of its own. It was completely unplanned. I would wager that this is part of a brand cleanup, a salvaging, because they're going to have to stand in front of multiple judges around the world and try to convince those judges and possibly juries that they have changed. We've seen this before, right? We've seen, people love to smear victims. We see people love to say that they're innocent. Prisons are full of convicted people who claim that they did not commit the crimes.
Yes.
That's what we know of. It says, and other offenses. So there could be other offenses that are piled on top of that. We're only aware of the ones that I mentioned. And I've also been told that there are a few agencies in the U.S. that have been poking around, asking questions for certain people in the United States. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is
interesting. I'm sure you'll agree. And there are plenty of disclosures and revelations which will cause you to learn more about something perhaps you didn't know that much of, increase your understanding of narcissism, and furnish you with information which for some of you may prove particularly pertinent with regard to protecting those that you care about. Therefore, I'd encourage you to pay attention to this forthcoming conversation. But when's it going to take place? That's the all-important news, isn't it? When are you able to hear the chocolatey, velvety tones of your glorious narrator in tandem with my guest. Well, this takes place on Saturday, 3rd of August at 4 p.m. UK time, 5 p.m. Central European time, 11 a.m. Eastern time in the United States, 8 a.m. Pacific time in the United States. So carve out some time from your day to ensure that you're available to enjoy and be enlightened by the next conversation with the Ultra. This time with Murdered by Crayons. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for listening.